Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rembach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who, first of all, is very quick-witted, but then also is deeply tenured in a lot of different ways, as well as in experience. Samuel Bacharach was born and raised in Brooklyn, East New York, before moving to Jamaica, Queens. Growing up in 2 working-class neighborhoods, he had absolutely no aspiration of going to college and becoming a Cornell professor. Simply put, anyone growing up in the neighborhoods of New York during that era develops a sense of survival, a deep appreciation of what it means to be on a team, and get people on their side. In many ways, the core of what Sam believes in today goes back to those days. He stumbled into his academic career at Cornell University, coming to the faculty in 1974. He's the author or editor of over 100 academic articles and 20 books. Sam has always had an interest in leaders and leadership. For him, leadership boils down to the skills of execution. And get them on your side and keep them on your side, he introduces readers to the concepts of political and managerial competence. More recently, he published The Agenda Mover and Transforming the Clunky Organization. The Agenda Mover explores the skills that leaders need to develop to get things done, and Transforming the Clunky Organization discusses the characteristics that keep organizations from thriving and meeting their potential. He is currently transitioning from his academic role to spending more time on his writing. Sam's legacy as an academic and author is that everyone can lead, and that in the final analysis, leaders are those with deep empathy, street smarts, and the political savvy to move things ahead. Charm and charisma are simply not enough. Everyone can make it if they develop some fundamental core skills. In collaboration with his wife, Yael, he founded the Bacharach Leadership Group, which focuses on training high-potential leaders at universities and Fortune 500 companies. Sam lives in the Chelsea neighborhood in New York City. Sam Bacharach, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I'm ready. Whether I can get you over the hump is a different question.
I'm sure you can. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you.
Right.
Can you share what your current passion is before, we can get to know even more about you?
Mm-hmm. This is the first time I was introduced with such a background goes so traumatically back into my youth, but I think as you grow older, you go back to where you came from. And I think I found lately that my current passion for all the hoopla is really to let people understand that their capacity to lead, and I spell leadership with a small L, and I just mean that the capacity to lead in their life, their capacity to lead in their career, their capacity to lead in anything, is in their hands. They're not trapped by their personality. I sometimes see this in my students, it's easy if you're this panache, charismatic kid that's come from a great home and you go out there and you can do it, but some of these kids need to learn that it's in their hand. And it's like in organizations, a lot of people out there with all this personality and charm, and they can talk you to death. My passion right now is to really make people aware, and I don't want to use the word empowerment in a loose way, but make people aware that it's in their control. Getting things done in leadership is in their control. And that in a lot of ways is going back to the beginning of my own biography. I've done this big corporations, so I'm spending a lot of time working with corporations instead of, I'm also spending time doing a lot of pro bono work and doing work where I can really impact people's lives and empower them at that level.
As you were talking, I started thinking about just the depth and breadth of, all of the research and, knowledge that you've had exposure to over the course of these past, couple decades. And that, I think I started thinking about the whole practical application piece. And then I started thinking about me, you and I talked about that progression and age and as wisdom comes as we I became certified in emotional intelligence, and you
Right.
empathy being important. But then you say everybody could do it. But I'm like, from an EQ or emotional intelligence perspective, there's a whole lot of deficiencies in certain leaders that they really need to work on in order for them to transform a clunky organization or get people to follow with them.
You know, we all have deficiencies, and I mean, we spend a lot of time coaching leaders on specific ways, and we all have deficiencies. But I think the first thing we have to do is make people aware that through understanding, self-reflection, training, reading, focusing your mind on the deficiencies, you can make a difference in doing that. And I think that, you know, we all talk about training and teaching. What the heck do we really want to do? We want to make sure that people can change their behaviors in ways that are functional. Look, for those of you, you know, the whole world will happily ever after, but even in our personal life, what's important is our capacity to change. All of my work, which is not rocket science, but all of my work is based on knowing what are the things you really should focus on, giving people the tools. You know, we live in a world of a lot of work. I come from an old world. I believe in a checklist world. Tell people the 7, 8 things that you think can help them, you know, and in fact, you know, you can make an impact. Tell organizations, tell leaders the things they're doing wrong. How can they do things differently? Don't make it diffuse. Make it concrete. Make it real. And everything. Emotional intelligence. I'm sure you're certified in emotional intelligence, but you and I know that at least 60% of the stuff you knew before you were certified. And that is, you knew it because you were emotionally intelligent enough to be able to get certified in emotional intelligence. You knew you were moving someplace. So, you know, sometimes I think the world is like the Wizard of Oz place that, you know, was it the scarecrow that was it the scarecrow? I forget. Oh, the lion. I forget which one of them that had all the knowledge, but thought they were an idiot, but they just needed a degree. My whole point in life is tell people you've got this capacity. Let me help you tap it. Here are the things you need to do.
You know, it's funny that you say that. And the reason I became certified is because I used to be very deficient at it.
There you go. So there we go. So and that's the certain areas. So for me, leadership, training in leadership is sitting down with leaders, doing organizations, giving them the skills to make the difference in a very concrete way, not just giving it in a very concrete way.
Well, and talking about concrete and talking about competencies and talking about skills. I mean, in the book, Transforming the Clunky Organization,
Right.
I really like the framework and the model that you have associated with breaking inertia. And you talk about the 5 challenges of breaking inertia. And I'll just go ahead and read those real quick. And you talk about questions that need to be asked. So you say, why is the organization sluggish? And then, so what we need from a challenge perspective is to evaluate its clunky and myopic tendencies. We talk about what's out there. And so we have to apply contextual competence, which is leaders as explorers. And you talk about what can be done about it. We talk about applying ideational competence, which is leaders as innovators. And then you talk about what support is needed. And then you mention applying political competence, meaning leaders as campaigners. And then how to implement, applying managerial competence, leaders as sustainers. So now when you started talking about, you know, these 5 challenges of breaking inertia, I have to really kind of go to the point of a weighting scenario. Like if you start looking at levels of importance, you know, where does that lie?
Let me take it one step back because you made my work sound more sophisticated than it is. I'm flattered, but let me just talk for a moment about the inertia issue. Why inertia? You know, we're sitting there. What do we really want from our leaders? You know, we're living in a world right now that we turn on the news. It doesn't matter what your politics is. What do we want? We want execution. For God's sake, get something done. I mean, in corporations, get something done. And most of the time, they're stuck with this inertia. Now, in organizations, what I'm arguing is that organizations, inertia is always, it's because they're clunky messes. There's interest groups, there's different businesses. Take a look, and that doesn't mean the organization is not successful. Take a look at some of our largest organizations. They're complex entity, and it's hard to get anything moving through them. So that's the whole show of being clunky. On the other hand, in some situations, you got people so micro-focused, so myopic, that they can't get out of that mindset. You know, you think only organization, think of what's going on in our country in politics. On one hand, you get this big clunky mess. On the other hand, you got micro focusing, okay? Macro focusing, that myopic vision. You know, we have it going on in the news today. We don't have to be rocket scientists. So what does a leader do? A leader has to understand these tendencies and has to move things ahead in spite of these two forces that cause inertia. Clunkiness and myopia cause inertia, to get things get stuck, and a leader can't afford to engage in that, can't afford to get stuck. A leader must execute in spite of that. That's our challenge to our political leaders, that's a challenge to the corporate leaders, and that's what I'm trying to deal with in this book. And what I'm saying is there are 4 or 5 things they have to do to make sure that happens, and inertia is broken.
Well, you know, as you're talking, though, I mean, for me, it's like you mentioned something about corporations and large organizations. I see that in small organizations, too.
Absolutely. I mean, you see this clunkiness, the whole idea, for example, why the word clunky, for example, why the word myopia. If you sit back for a moment and you just take the words in and think of any organizations or any situation you're caught in, either the situation is very clunky, or think of your own world. I've got all these elements, so you got all the, so think of a lot. I've worked for a lot of major corporations, and so one here has got an office in Bangalore, an office in the Research Triangle, San Jose, you name it. I work in one of these large organizations. Academia, I work for a lot of universities. These are large, successful, clunky organizations. And now you're sitting there in your office, in the research office, or whatever, and you want to move something ahead. How do you do it? It's impossible. On the other hand, you get all these people in these organizations that are caught in myopia, micro-stuck. The same thing is true in startup organizations with the move too fast. What happens is startup organizations sometimes get caught in all this myopia. They micro-focus, or they become clunky by overreaching too quickly, okay? And it's the same dichotomous tension. And it's a dichotomous tension we face in our life. My challenge to leaders is to understand this dichotomy as the obstacle, as the thing that causes the inertia. And then I say to people, okay, how do you break inertia? It's like the way you break it in your own work. You break it, number one, by understanding the context in which your organization is operating, by reading the signals in the environment, leading and really beginning to pick up new ideas. And then we all hear about ideation, by moving ideas in through the organization. So that's the innovative part, coming up with ideas. Think of your own world. You can think of what you want to do in your career, you expand what you want to do in your career, and then you build on it. You ideate on it. So that's the whole idea of leading for discovery. But the problem in the world we live in, people have plenty of great ideas. Look at our Congress. There's plenty of great ideas. Look at our major corporations. You know, our corporations are totally innovative. And people think, that's great. Yeah, right. So what if you have a great idea in an organization and you can't get it through the system? Great ideas are simply not enough. So then I ask people, you've got to deal with delivery. You've got to have the political skills, the competence to move ideas through the maze of clunkiness and the overfocus of myopia.
So as you were talking too, I started thinking about, okay, so the political aspects, I kind of, get that. I get that, the whole influence and the psychology.
And the forming coalitions and winning people over, right?
Yeah, I get that part. And there, for me, though, when I started thinking about the actual execution piece, because you talked about how that is so important, there's a particular part of the book for me that just totally blew up at me when you start talking about the execution piece. And in the book, you talk about it being monitoring for tight and loose execution.
Right.
And so what I often see is that people put in tight, types of measurements in place and expect to have a loose outcome that's more innovative and creative, or they do the reverse and want to have something that's a little bit more structured as an outcome.
Yeah, I'm very taken by this one's been a heck of a good course on emotional intelligence. I'm very taken by that because one of the things that's haunted me in my entire career is that that distinction sometimes goes by the wayside. So I really kind of very taken that you picked it up, and because I think it's actually a very important point. We're caught in that. If you think about it, that distinction is at the heart of all leadership and management training. And let me just give you an example. I don't know if you've had the good fortune to have a child or any children, but if you do, 3, good Lord, and your main worry is, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock at night, where are they? Okay, and you know, in this world. But on the other hand, you go, well, I don't want to squeeze them. I got to give them their space. I got to give them a little autonomy. If I get too tight about this, I'm going to choke their creativity. I'm going to stifle their growth. On the other hand, you know, you're standing there and if you're anything a neurotic father as I am, you're trying to think, yeah, well, maybe, okay, I'll call them at 10:30. Okay. How do I, you know, no, I'm saying that as joking, but that's the management challenge. That's the management challenge. It's the challenge of understanding of how tightly or loosely you want to be. So, for example, if you want to be innovative and give everybody all the space in the world, you'll be very loose. And if, on the other hand, you're very concerned about the tight execution, you'll be very prescriptive. But in this world where uncertainty is all around, you've got to sort of balance it. You as a leader have got to juggle. You've got to juggle. Just like as a parent. How much space do I give them, and how do I make sure they're safe? So same thing as a leader in organizations. How much space do I give them, and how do I make sure they don't squander this organization to death? Okay, that balance. So I think we can talk about that. I think that is actually that's sort of one of my favorite points that's all too often ignored. That is the key question to me in sort of in management. That is, it's the yin and the yang of management. How tight, how much control do you want to have? How loose, how much autonomy do you want to give? So if you think about it, control, autonomy. Everything else besides that management, it's really kind of, this is the heart of the whole thing. You're absolutely correct.
Okay, so you had mentioned before we actually started this interview that you're actually working on yet another book to actually dig deeper into that particular topic.
But I meant that was more as a threat than a promise. But be it the case, yes, and I am, because in doing this volume, and I would welcome that conversation and in the future with you, even off the air, because in doing this volume, that notion actually became, and I went back to some earlier things, that actually became very, very, very important to me, and in a real sense. So, I mean, for example, let me give you an example. Think about leadership. What you're really talking about is facilitative versus directive leadership. The idea of, do you want to be the leader that facilitates all these groups? So how many times have you been in a meeting and there's a leader saying, okay, they're discussing, I'm giving the ideas, they're putting ideas, they're doing ideation, they're ideating you to death, there are more ideas in the room, and they're wonderful, they're cohesive, and you're going, dear God, when is this meeting going to be over? We can get this project moving again, okay? All right? Now, on the one hand, we live in a world of interacting. How do you balance the two? How do you call that meeting and say, okay, enough, let's move on? How do you, I mean, I know how micro that actually sounds, but, you know, for example, in design, in innovative organizations, if you work in a lot of organizations, you know that design and programmers, and everything, they need resources. Now, you know, there are also tech junkies out there. If you tell them the opportunity, we need this machine, we need that. When do you give them enough resources, and then you say, wait, up to here, because I can't do everything. I can't do everything. I know this sounds interesting to try, but let me give you even in terms of evaluation. Okay. Think of our evaluation and feedback systems. So you now have a matrix list of everything on the list. That's great. You got the 50 items you wanted to do. You wanted to fly to Europe, maintain course, get along with everybody, live happily ever after, deliver the product, get a 50-point list. Okay? What if all they're doing is operating towards your list? Okay? What if you want to say, I want a more subjective evaluation? Let me give you an example that comes, since you got me going on this for a second. You've got kids, you have kids in school?
Yes.
Okay. So now the teacher comes and says, okay, here's the list, 62 things we did right for your kid. And you're going, yeah, but they still somehow in a Gestalt big way screwed up here someplace, okay? Point is, one is subjective. How do you, loose and tight? That's the world people live in. And, you know, and let me just make a little point here. People love making things tight because it's good about execution. But the truth, sometimes they make things tight because, as they used to say in the military, it covers them in other parts of their body, because they say, "Oh, here are the 37 things that we do. We did it exactly what you wanted us to do it." So I give you one of my favorite examples. Years ago, I was on a plane. Not years ago. I mean, I've been on a plane quite often since then. But I was sitting next to I have a friend of mine who's still flying, and he flies 747s. And in this case, he was sitting next to me, and he said to me, "Any idiot can fly a 747 because it's so prescriptive by the numbers." So I says, and I turned around to him and says, "If it's that tight, it's great." So I said to him, "Well, then why the pilots?" In those days, they got paid well. I'm not sure what their salary is. Hopefully, they're still getting paid. I said, "No, if that's the case, if any idiot can fly 747, then why do they get paid so well?" And he said, "For the 5 minutes an idiot cannot fly a 747. Okay? The point is, when do you lose? When are you tight? Great question. I get carried away. I think I just talked my entire new book out nonstop from New York here. So, but that's the idea. That's the idea. I'm working on that. I think it's a very important point. It's also, by the way, in startups, organizations, as in any type of organization.
Well, and for me, as you were talking, I started thinking about something that has resonated with me for a long time about this particular issue, and talking about leading. And so when you start referring to like creatives or a creative group or a group that likes to ideate, is, you don't give them the entire beach to go play in the sand with. You give them a box.
And that is why one of the interesting questions, this is great. I mean, I'm too old to be flattering, but this is really on the money. But this is a good question, because here's a question. Okay, so let's talk about ideation. Okay, I've been in rooms. I've run a lot of ideation sessions with my group. So we get tons of points on the board. So I remember holding one with a group in Virginia, and they all the ideas on the boards. And the point was the following: as a leader, you don't want to constrain that. But you also want to take that list and help frame it, because otherwise, you're not, if you're in a hotel business, you're not in the bowling business, okay? You want to frame it. So we're talking about constrained creativity. You as a leader, and that's why I said as a leader, you have to understand your environment and what the competition is doing. You bring the frame. You let their insight work within the frame that you and your colleagues were able to. Sometimes they'll shake your frame, but it's not just, it isn't like, when the frame is loose, it's like trying to write a novel without having a core theme, okay? So the leadership challenge for you is to understand the world you live in, understand the context of your business, understand your competition, so you can frame the process. That's and they work within that frame.
So for me, I think it's almost like really the art of divergent and convergent thinking.
That's right. You're good. The idea is exactly that. Okay. When, in fact, if you think, and we do that, in fact, currently right now, we're running a two-day session where we're taking a group of people. Leader gave it to them. I won't mention it, but it's being run right now. In fact, so we started with the leadership team. The leadership team put out all their broad ideas, okay, the framed ideas. Now, it wasn't just a broad theme, which is even convergent. We're now taking a group of about 30 people, would you believe, in their room. They put all the ideas on the board. Now, the leadership team comes back together, and we all now begin to converge. We look at what's on there, and convergence to me has to do with beneath the themes. How many ideas can we and still stay home? It is exactly that. And one of the things that I think we forget is that and I discussed it, and not to plug the book, and that is exactly why I talk in the book as leading for ideation. That ideation does not occur without that. Some tightness is needed. God, I hope your participants are listening, not thinking the two of us having like one super intellectual trip here. but these are important questions for people to think about. I mean, they really are. Think in your own world. And again, I go back, how much control do you want to have? And when you choke your organization to death, or when you got no guidance at all. Many of our corporations, if you go back to Kodak, for example, And you go back to Kodak and really, really look serious. Everybody talks about Kodak. It's sort of like talking, who can we pick on today? Let's go after Kodak. I mean, the point is, if you go back to the organizations that blockbusters, okay, and you begin to realize that at the heart of all of these things is leaders not dealing with these type of issues, not dealing with the looseness, not dealing with the tightness. That's what it was. It isn't because because they didn't get along with their mother and they didn't have a deeper understanding of life. And, I'm not a big person. I believe in personality. Personality gets you in the door. And the psychological approach gets you in the door. I think it's important. Leaders have to listen, but they have to. Why are they listening? They're listening so they can pick up good ideas and they can work with people, move things forward. The world is not simply dictated by your charm. Again, you have to have these skills. So I have a very executable notion of leadership. It's not simply about your psychic mindset.
Well, I mean, gosh, as I'm sitting here thinking, oh, wow, going back to your bio and how many things you've contributed on, all of those things, I know you're obviously a very inspirational person. And one of the things that we use on the show are quotes to help inspire us. Is there one or two that you can share that you like?
Yeah, when I left for graduate school, come to think, I won't give you the exact quote, but my father who passed away, who worked in Brooklyn in a place called Domino Sugar, which is now a condominium, of course. It was a welder. So I left for graduate school to go to the University of Wisconsin in his old Plymouth, and he stood there and he said to me, now you're going out there. When I grew up, out west was Ohio. And he said to me, look, the only thing I can hope is just try not to screw it up. And every time, whether it's before this interview, anything else, the whole idea is just not to mess it up. And to me, messing it up is understanding one simple thing. Good ideas, good intentions are a dime a dozen. Getting something done is difficult. Sometimes, me too. Sometimes I read or see an idea. I thank you for the statement about my career, but sometimes I see, but I'm not really, I sometimes see ideas and people that have accomplished, they're able to take a simple idea and push it so far. Think of something. How many of you have never thought in your entire life, we all travel with our parents when we were younger, how many of you in your entire life have never thought of a concept, Airbnb. We didn't think of Airbnb, but we all know what B&B was, but we didn't push it. I remember years ago, simple notion, I sat in my basement in Ithaca, New York with something called BitNet. It was the internet. Before the internet. I said, oh, wow, this would be a great way of doing libraries and books. And I had this idea, well, folks, there ain't no Bacharach.com, there is an Amazon.com. You can't screw it up. Good ideas are simply not enough. You got to get stuff done, and that's it. And that's what I put all my focus on in my work, giving people the capacity in organizations and in life to get stuff done.
Well, but with the getting things screwed up things, that happens as well, and they're learning opportunities, and we share those on the show. And we talk about times where we've had to get over a hump. Is there a time where you've been able to do that? You can share.
Sure. I mean, I remember daily. But I think the learning opportunities that we learn the most is from interpersonal relations and interpersonal learning opportunities. I have been very blessed by the people I work with, and sometimes I think I've been blessed by the fact that for every so often they were cursed by my presence. And let me tell you what, I work with a number of people, and one of them is a woman I've worked with for the last, oh my Lord, it's 17 years or something. And when she came to work for me, I understood how bright I was because I was a professor. Well, over time, very quickly, I understood that I may have the degree, but she had the wisdom and the street spot, and we became a great team. And we became a great team because of, hopefully, our capacity to listen to each other, to tell each other to shut the heck up. And I think you learn from interpersonal stuff. But the one person story I want to share with you, and very quickly, on learning. When I came to Cornell many, many years ago, and I mean many, many years ago, There was a woman working, and I had made phone calls, long-distance phone calls. You folks remember what long-distance phone calls were? Anyway, but I made long-distance phone calls. The reason I made these long-distance phone calls, I was only there for 6 months, is because my heart was broken. My then girlfriend was living in Switzerland. So I made these long-distance phone calls. The woman that was in charge of the offices down below called me and said to me, you know, you're not supposed to be making long-distance phone call from your office without permission, okay? And I got irate. I said, I will. I'm a professor here, and I walked up the stairs. This is God's truth. I walked up the stairs. As I got up the stairs, I remembered my father. And I walked downstairs, and I apologized to her, okay? Here's the point. A year and a half later, I received a grant. Okay. And the then dean, who's a dear friend of mine today, this was many years ago, told me that if I get, he would give me a certain, like 1/10 or something of my salary for summer salary, and I should be thankful for it. This woman calls me a few days later, says, I got to talk to you. And she says, between you and me, she says, you're entitled to 2/10 salary. Go back and negotiate. I went back and I negotiated and got 2/10 salary. Had I not apologized to her, had I been the same arrogant SO, whatever you guys want to call it, on polite terms, I never would have gotten the extra money. Had I not learned to work with my colleagues here, my colleague here in this office, I couldn't publish a book without my friends in my corner if my life depended on it. So my career has been based on that. That's the stuff I've learned. The interpersonal stuff, that's it. Leaders listen. Leaders apologize, but leaders also move agendas.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, we're with Dr. Samuel Bacharach, and let's take a quick message, and we're going to come back for the Hump Day Hoedown.
Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better.
All right, Fast Leader Legion, it's time for the
Hump Day Hoedown.
Okay, Samuel, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions.
How
And you're
fast?
going to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Dr. Samuel Bacharach, are you ready to hoe down?
Sounds a little intimidating, and since I've never been to a hold down, I will fake this real good.
So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
What holds me? A sense of insecurity.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Believe in the people you work with.
And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I know that I'm not the smartest person in the room.
And what do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
I can work with a team and understand that context.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. And of course, we're going to put a link to Transforming the Clunky Organization on your show notes page as well.
The one book outside of my books, which are a lot, there is one book, and that book is actually an interesting book. It's a book called Big Enough to Be Inconsistent. It's a book about Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation and the whole notion of what was going in his mind as he was dealing with the Emancipation Proclamation as a leader. The book is called Big Enough to Be Inconsistent.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Samuel Bacharach. Okay, Samuel, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take all the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Empathy, nothing else. Empathy. I take back to being 25. Empathy, being empathetic to people, being empathetic. Empathy is the one skill I would take back with me.
Why?
Because empathy is the key to everything. It's the key to political success, emotional success, social success. If I understand where other people are coming from, I understand their aspirations, their pain. Whether I understand that in an organization as a leader, I understand where other divisions are coming from, where I understand where other businesses are coming from, when I understand in my own personal life where my children are coming from, where my wife is coming from, when if I understand in my own world where my friends are coming from, where if I understand where my allies and my enemies are coming from, I am empowered, and I'm empowering myself by understanding others. People think empathy is a touchy-feely notion. It is the key to success, political success, economic success, social success. The only thing I would take with me is empathy.
Dr. Samuel Bacharach, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
You can get me at samuel.bacharach, SB at BLG-lead, SB at BLG-lead, or samuel.bacharach@gmail. I'm always welcome for a little chit-chat and some email exchanges.
Samuel Bacharach, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you, and thanks you for helping us get over the hump.
Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.